At the heart of strategy are competitive moves. If you look at any strategy, you would find within it one or more than one competitive moves. In the literature, different categories of competitive moves are identified. One of them is first mover advantage. You become the first mover. That's your move. You enter the market first before anyone else enters and gain a grip there. Another often used move is to become a disruptive innovator. Come up with a radically different product or service that you are distinctly identified. A third competitive move is called establishing a foothold. Think about a company like IKEA. They normally established one big, large shop in a new country where they want to enter. They just put a foothold and then wait and watch and see how things go. Blue ocean strategy is another competitive move wherein you don't get into head on collision with your competitors. You look for the blue ocean. You find a place for yourself and be the king there. A bricolage or bricolage is another strategic move. And this move, as the name implies, consists of putting together existing pieces, existing products, existing services, and make something new. You synergize your existing strengths and make something greater than the mere linear sum of those. The concept of synergy is applied in bricolage strategy. So there are different kinds of moves, but we can classify them into often we can classify them into one of these 5 or 6 categories. Let us learn a little bit more on each of these moves. A first mover advantage exists when making the initial move into a market allows the firms to establish a dominant position than other firms. Other firms will later struggle to enter that market because you entered the first, you understood the market before them, you understood the market much better than them. You even trained the market about their expectations. So those are some of the advantages of becoming a first mover. But it also comes with a lot of disadvantages. For example, you may not have a perfected product. You may not have used the best technologies available to make your product. So you may make a suboptimal entry into the market as a first mover. Your competition will catch up. They will understand the true value of why your product has become successful or why your service has become successful, but then come up with better technologies to compete. I am thinking about the pager technologies. The pagers came for a very short time. A few companies made their first move, but as a technology, it did not stand for a long time. Mobile phones, cellular mobile phones came and caught up, and those companies that were the first movers in the pager revolution, they all died all too soon. So sometimes it is too risky to be a first mover. You wait and watch for the first and second movers, or even the third movers, to see how they try and learn different things and how they fail. Oftentimes it is said it's better to learn from someone else's mistakes. But the question is, if they do not make mistakes, you don't have a way to enter certain markets and become a dominant player. The next move is come up with a radically different, distinct, disruptive innovation. And you can see that all too often in the contemporary business space. Airbnb, Uber, all those things are disruptive innovations. Even if you go a few decades before, PayPal was a disruptive innovation. Tesla is a disruptive innovation. What makes them distinct? They all entered into relatively matured market spaces, but they entirely reshuffle the industry in which they operate. They redefine the fundamental building blocks of the industry in which they operate. PayPal fundamentally shook the banking industry. Tesla is radically remaking the auto industry or transportation industry. So disruptive innovations could gain you a true competitive advantage. Those are big changes, those affect the whole market or industry. Disruptive innovations are useful for companies that want to enter into a market space where there is no room, there is no free room to play with the established big players. If Tesla had come with another gasoline driven car, they could not compete with Toyota, Honda, or Ford or Chevy. They could not compete with them. So they had to come up with something radically different. A foothold technique is kind of a ploy. It is relatively of low cost in terms of implementation, and also if it doesn't work, you don't lose heavily, you do not bleed heavily to withdraw. So the value of a foothold strategy far exceeds the size and cost of maintaining it. It helps you test the market before making your big move. It helps you to learn. It helps you to understand with minimal expenses. No one thinks about Walmart as something that came up with, that also employed this kind of a tactic or this kind of a strategic move. In fact, if you read the history of Walmart, the first Walmart store opened in July 1962 in Arkansas. And they waited, tried and tested the market to gain market intelligence before growing much, much faster later. So foothold strategy could be useful as a way of doing test marketing, gathering market intelligence before making massive investments. The fourth kind of strategic move that I would like to talk is blue ocean strategy or blue ocean strategic move. As the name implies, you do not want to get into rough waters where there is a lot of competition for fish. You go to a blue ocean, make your own terms and conditions, and be a leader in that new market space. You establish yourself as the dominant player. It's also a way of making a first mover advantage without worrying about moving into an established market. You create a new market and make a new entry there. Relatively safe way of doing things. It is not always entering into a new geographical area. You could redefine the definition of an existing market under blue ocean strategy. Maybe there is a market there, a layer of market there that you never anticipated existed. That's what Starbucks did. What Starbucks did was to understand that there is a market for coffee lovers, not just old people, retired people, and hipsters. There is a market for coffee lovers who would go to a shop like Starbucks and sit and drink for, paying $4 to $5 for a cup of coffee. So blue ocean strategy involves creating a new untapped market rather than competing with rivals in an existing market. You can think about different companies adopting one or the other blue ocean strategic moves at some time or the other in their existence. No business, no firm wants to dissipate all its energy fighting with rivals left and right. It is much more prudent to identify and create a space for yourself where you are the uncrowned king. You can define the rules of the game in that market space. You can define the expectations of customers in that space. So competitors will have a harder time to imitate you, not just in terms of tangible products and services, but also in terms of intangible experiences. So blue ocean strategy is very important for businesses. The fifth category of strategic move I would like to elaborate a little bit is the concept of bricolage. The term implies assembling existing pieces to make something new, to create something that is more valuable than the sum total of the existing things. If you see a lot of innovations, you will know that those innovations are reshufflements of existing ideas, existing products, existing services, existing knowledge. So most innovations are improvements upon existing products, which at one point in time were also innovations. So a bricolage is mixing existing innovations, existing products to make something new. And some of these actually will become blue ocean moves, because when you mix them, you may create something new. You may be able to cater to a new market that did not exist before. It's similar to finding new uses for existing products. So like for example, baking soda or aspirin. There are numerous uses that came up for these products after, in addition to the original uses for which these products were developed. But at a later stage, people realize that if you mix baking soda with something else, it becomes even more useful than baking soda alone. So that's an example of bricolage, simple example of bricolage. When it comes to baking soda example is a very simplified example, but think about something like Uber Eats. It is a bricolage of two innovations. Uber is an innovation. Food delivery is another innovation. But Uber Eats sandwiches them together, put them together, and make something new. So the key takeaway from this is that firms can take advantages of one or more of these moves or a combination of them as part of their strategic redefinement process. And these moves, there are numerous moves, but some of the most commonly seen moves are, let me recap: first mover advantage, the move of being a first mover. The second one is disruptive innovation. Third one is blue ocean thinking. Fourth one is gaining a foothold. And fifth one is bricolage. There are various other moves, but if you see the success of different strategies of companies, different companies, you can find elements of these 5 or 6 moves